think I got it. Something like that. Okay. What's going on, everybody? This is Gene here with another Hero Academy session for you, episode 5. In this episode, we're going to be talking about keeping your focus, or getting and keeping focus. For many of you that are out there, whether you're a creative, entrepreneur, self-business owner, whatever that it is that you're doing that's on the side necessarily, or even in your day job, just trying to stay productive and focused is sometimes a little hard to do. And so in this episode, I want to kind of talk a little bit about that, talk to you about what I do and some of my best practices, things that I've learned along the way that help me out, and hopefully they'll help you out. And so without further ado, let's get going. Now, there's something that I researched recently that I heard that kind of threw me for a loop. This term called cognitive switching penalty. And when you get a chance, Google it, look it up, and see what it and see what you can get from it. But essentially, it's a term for when you switch your attention from one object to another, and how your brain will spend time and energy thrashing, loading and reloading those concepts. And so essentially, it's like, if you're working on something, you get distracted, or you decide, hey, another idea comes up, I want to go ahead and try to do this really quick. The energy that you have into that first task that you're working on is then taken away and readjusted towards the second task. And so you may not be able to recover when you come back from that second task back to the first task in a way to have the same amount of energy or focus to be able to continue. And so, yeah, when you get a chance, look that up. I thought it was kind of interesting. It seems to be one of those newer terms that are out there that are being floated around in the community. Cognitive switching penalty. I'll add a link in the comments below so we can talk a little bit more about that. But if you've read any recent articles over the past couple of years, everybody kind of talks a little bit about multitasking and how multitasking really isn't something that's true. You can get into the finite points about whether you can listen to something and still do something at the same time and still be engaged in both, maybe. But overall, trying to do two tasks at the same time really is hard to do, if not impossible, because of the way that our brains are set up. We really can't have two cognitive thoughts, concurrently at the same time. And so, because of that, even though we kind of know that, we still have this idea that we're going to be able to kind of shift our focus back and forth between, one or two or three different tasks throughout our day. Now, some of the things that I've learned along the way that I kind of want to give you in terms of tips for getting focus or staying in focus. Now, the first thing is to have a plan before you start working. One of the toughest things that I've ever found is that I used to always try to say, okay, at a certain time of day or night, I'm going to work on this project. And I may not have the project fully defined, but I have an idea of what the project is. And so I'll just say, okay, at this time I'm going to do that. And more times than not, especially when I set it up and it's days ahead, what'll be funny is that all different things will kind of come to will happen. I'll get people that'll stop by. I'll get a phone call from somebody. Something happens to pop up, that I have to drive all my attention to, and then therefore it's like, okay, well, I said I was going to do this at this time. Now I'm going to do it maybe a little later, and then I never get to do it because now the energy that I had for it, that I kind of set my mind to, is no longer there. But essentially, I didn't usually have a plan. And so that's one of the bigger things that I would say is that before you sit down to say you're going to start working on something, have a plan for what you're going to accomplish. It's very helpful. If anything, it may even be more helpful to write it down and use a checklist. That checklist may be just a scratch pad. It may be an actual app. I'm very app driven now because of all the different papers that I used to have and notebooks that I used to have. And so I'm trying to consolidate it all and have it where I can easily access it no matter where I am. And so I'm more app driven. We'll talk about a little bit about apps later on, but maybe find an app, and use that and see how that works for you. Next thing that I would say to help with focus is we call them sprints or design sprints. I'm from the design community, but essentially it's like a sprint. And so we'll say, okay, I have at such a time of day, I have 20 minutes, I have an hour, I have 40 minutes. Doesn't matter how much time it is. You only have a certain amount of time. And so within that certain amount of time, what you'll do is say, okay, I'm going to get this task done. It's a singular task. It's not multiple things. This is one thing I'm going to get done in this 20 minutes. I'm going to do nothing else but this. And so we call that a sprint. And that may be something you want to put on your calendar and say, hey, at this time I'm going to do this production sprint, this creative sprint, this design sprint. Doesn't matter. But essentially that's what that is. Okay. And that's really helpful too. It's sometimes even a challenge for me when I say that I'm going to do a design sprint, because I'll have a clock and I'll say, okay, I'm going to get this done in 20 minutes, and I'll set my watch and I'll set a time, a time down, or on my phone, and I'll set a timer, and I'll kind of have it, not in front of me, but I'll have it enough to where I see it. And if I start to notice, it's like, okay, I've only got a few minutes left. For some reason, I'm just so much energized. I'm kind of like challenging it and feeling like, okay, I said I can get this done in this amount of time. This is the amount of time that I set to do it, and I've got half the amount of time left. Do I have half the amount of work already completed? If I don't, then I'm upping my game, or I'm trying to dial in more. And so having that timer, knowing that it's this is just all within a sprint, seems to really help me out. Okay, it's kind of like playing against yourself, but it seems to help out. All right. Another thing that I would highly recommend is turning off the internet. These days we have multiple devices. Whether it's anywhere from a smart TV to our smartphones to our tablets and watches and whatever else that we have, right? More times than not, what you have to work on may not need internet access. And if it does, I would say, if you can, maybe even limit it down to just the finite app that you need to use, and then close everything else down. But if you can, shut the internet off. And that's on everything. So that way, while you're working, and even if you have a phone, set it to do not disturb, and we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit too, but turn off, put it in airplane mode. So that way, while you're working, there's no chance, there shouldn't be any chance for any notifications from social media, or a call to come through, any of those random distractions that, for me, I always feel like when I'm in a design sprint, or when I say I'm going to get a task done, those are the best times for those things to come up. I kind of eliminate those right off the gate. And so that's really, really helpful by just shutting the internet off altogether for that time, for that amount of time. And then you can turn it back on. And it's also a little bit of a reward if you think about it, because at the end of that time, and you've gotten that done, you've gotten that task done, or tasks done, and you flip your internet back on, you'll get all those notifications still. And when you do get them, it's like, oh man, this is a reward. First of all, it's a reward because I got what I said I was going to get done. And then second of all, now I see all the stuff, and I can kind of engage, and I can, kind of treat myself by engaging in all these things that I missed during the time that I was working. Okay. The next thing that I would say is to create or find or create a creative space, or in some cases even a productive space. For those of you that actually create products, it may be where you have a table set aside in a room somewhere that when you sit down at that table, it's only for you to do that task. It's not a table that's also used in conjunction with something else. Like, it's not your dining room table or your kitchen table where you're also eating, and then you're also you clear that off and then you get stuff done, because you won't really respect it in that way. So if you have an area that you can set to say, okay, and this part of my house or my home, this is where I get this stuff done. When you walk into that room to go and do that, you're thinking about that. Prior to the whole time, of going into that room, you're thinking, okay, as soon as I get in there, and something about like crossing that threshold of the door frame, walking to that space in that area, it does something to you psychologically. Again, we're kind of playing against ourselves to kind of psych ourselves up into being more productive and staying and being focused. But something about, getting in there and like, oh, wow, yeah, as soon as I get in this room, I just feel it. Or as soon as I sit down at this space and all my things are here to do my task, they're all right here. I don't have to run to all these different places. And when I'm here, there's nothing else here. There's no toys here from the kids. There's no other computers here or something else here, or a phone here that, somebody else has to come in and use and be around, or somebody else is talking while I'm trying to do stuff, or somebody else is sitting on the couch right over here next to me and they're, laughing or playing around on their phone, and I feel like I'm missing out on something, and I'm seeing that, no, it's just this specific space for you to be able to create or produce that is separate from everything else, around you. All right. The next thing that I would say is to, while you create up that space, is to set up a do not disturb system, for that space. If it's something that is if it's a place that's a room that you can close, I would say do that. Close the door, and if you do, use something like this. Use a little sticky pad and there's just put well, I don't know if it shows up correctly that way, but just say, do not disturb until 8 p.m. Just something that you can just tear off, put on the door. It's nothing, you don't have to go out and go buy something, but essentially just put that there. That way, before anybody even knocks on the door, and hopefully that they don't, but just essentially saying, hey, don't even knock on the door when you see the sign. This sign is up. Don't bother me until that time is passed. Once the time is passed, then you can come in if the door is closed, and that's fine. Or I'll come out after that time is done, so that way we can engage at that point. But for this time, until this time, do not bother me whatsoever, unless the house is unless the house is on fire, something crazy like that. But that's really, really helpful, especially if you have a place where you can close a door. That for us at least is very key. We have kids, and so whenever one of us really needs to get to work, we usually say, hey, go downstairs and go use this room, or go in the corner of this room and go use that and close the door, and then we'll keep the kids on the other side of the house or downstairs or something like that, so that way you don't even hear, or try not to hear, too much of the distraction that's in there, and they know when they see the sign up, don't even bother. The next thing is, depending on where you typically work, like for us, we work from home, and so sometimes it's a benefit, in the most part it's a benefit because you're there and you have everything you need, and it's comfortable. But sometimes also, if you have, let's say, your main job, and then you have your side hustle, doing your side hustle at the same desk or area where you have your main job functions, sometimes ends up being more counterproductive. And for us, I would say it does something psychologically, where it's like, I've been in this seat for the last 8 hours. I'm tired of being in this seat. I just can't be here anymore. I can't see the same stuff anymore. And so creating an alternate workspace is really, really helpful. In some cases, that is out of the house or out of the home. For us, it's like a Starbucks. For me, I go to different coffee shops and I'll frequent them because there's something about being in an area where it's like, okay, there's a lot of noise here. I'll put my headphones on and then I'll just get right to it, and something about, or even if I don't have my headphones, just having all that, I can kind of, block it out. It's in the background for me, and I'm able to just focus, and I'm just here. I know that everybody that's coming in and out of the establishment or the coffee shop isn't for me, and so I'm not looking up to see who it is or anything like that. I'm not expecting anybody, but I'm able to just focus on what I'm doing right then and there. And so something about just being in a different place is helpful too. Going back to what I said before about having like a design sprint or creating time, by going to these coffee houses, normally they're not open too late, and so depending on what time you go, you only have a certain amount of time that you can kind of get stuff done. So if you're going after work, you're only going to have till about 8:30, 9 o'clock, or maybe 10 o'clock at the best for you to kind of get a certain amount of work done. And so that's really helpful too, by finding an alternate place that's outside of your norm to kind of get stuff done. All right. Now, if you're able to either whether it's go find a place or maybe it's working out of your home, we do things called working sessions. And working sessions essentially are where we get together with maybe a couple of people and we say, hey, let's all get together at this date and this and these times, and come over here, I'll go over there, whatever, and we're just gonna work. And it's just the idea of like, several other people, and in our case, maybe several other creatives, we all got our laptops out, we all got our pens and papers and notebooks out, and we're just there, everybody's just doing stuff. And so it's kind of like a creative space where everybody's here. And so every once in a while we might stop and just get some opinion from somebody else, but essentially we're just all there kind of keeping each other accountable to making sure that we're all doing something that we need to get done for that time that we're there while we're at this location. And you can kind of make it fun, and where it's like, hey, everybody bring something to eat, or bring a finger thing, or bring a drink or something like that, so that we can all kind of pull from or whatever. We don't have to worry about trying to stop and order out or anything like that. but it's like everything that we need is right here. And, if we need to get some feedback, we can kind of ask about that. And just something about that vibe really does something for you when you're there. And it's like, I know that these 2 or 3 other people that are here with me, they're trying to get some stuff done too. And so we're all trying to do this together. And at the end of it, it's kind of nice to say, hey, what'd you get done? Did you get everything that you want to get done? Yeah, I did. I got what I wanted to get done. Did you get stuff done? Yeah, I did. And, it's rewarding in itself, being able to kind of like humble brag, with each other about how all the things that we got accomplished within that sprint that we decided to say and block out of time. All right. Now, one other thing I would say is in terms of your task list, if you create one, if you say that you have to get a certain amount of things done, one thing that I would say, and I've read this in several books, and it's called swallowing the frog. Essentially, what that means is getting the most toughest task out of the way first, and then and it's very rewarding too, but at the same time, getting that one thing that you really don't want to do, and that might be making some cold calls, that might be a project that you have to research because you don't fully know what you want to get into, and so you got to research it, and then you've got to document some stuff, and then you got to put some stuff together, whatever that it is. But getting that out of the way first is really, really beneficial, because you get a sense of fulfillment when you're done with it, and then every other task after that is gonna seem really, really easy because you got that out of the way. Versus by doing all the smaller tasks first and then leading up to your bigger task, you kind of always think over your shoulder, like, I still got to get that done. Even though I'm getting these things done, I still got to get that one thing done, and it's kind of intimidating. And one of the things that I'll say for me is that when I've done it in reverse, is that I'll get maybe, like, let's say I've got 10 tasks. No, let's not say 10 tasks. Let's say I've got 5 tasks. The 5th task is the biggest task that I've got to get done. I might get the first 4 done, however long it takes me. Maybe I get them done within an hour, and then I've got the last task that's going to take me by about an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours. I might get those first 4 tasks done, and then I turn around and say, well, I got these done. I really don't need to get that last task done. I can kind of kick that to tomorrow because I really kind of feel productive, or I feel accomplished, and I got some stuff done. I can kick that to tomorrow, and really I shouldn't. And really, and in some cases I really can't. I really should get this done now. But because I have this false sense of accomplishment because I've got these other things done, I'm kind of tricking my own self and saying, hey, you don't really need to worry about these things. You already got this stuff done. Don't worry about it. No, in reverse, do that bigger task, get it out of the way, get that sense of accomplishment. It'll really energize you, similar to what a caffeine is going to do for you, and then get those other things done afterwards. All right, so I've got a few more things for you guys. Using a visible timer. I kind of talked about this in the beginning, where I may use my phone, may use my watch or whatever, or a clock. Something that has a countdown is as a visual timer, I would highly suggest that you use, because again, having that not necessarily in your face, but kind of having that nearby is really, really beneficial. That plus your task list, let's say you have a task list on a sticky pad, having that next to the timer and then checking stuff off as you go along is really, really encouraging. Again, you're kind of playing yourself against the time and playing against yourself in terms of what you can get done, but it's really, really encouraging to kind of see how much time you have left and how much time you have left to get something done, but then also seeing what you've accomplished in the amount of time that you set aside to start working. All right. Next thing, actually, this is the last thing: meditation breaks. These are really, really, really key. Depending on how much time throughout your day, and this could be at work as well as on your side hustle time, taking some time out of your day, whether it be 3 minutes, a minute to do a breathing practice, up to 5 minutes for a breathing practice. I highly suggest. Thanks, guys. I highly suggest that you take some meditation breaks. These are where you just kind of unplug from everything. Maybe walk away. You stand up. It's take maybe a few minute walk away from your desk or away from your seat, down to someplace. Maybe it's in your car. Maybe it's in a closet, and you just kind of close the door and shut the lights. And it's like, okay, I'm going to sit in here. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm really, really going to think about what it is that I want to accomplish, or think about what I've accomplished so far, and maybe just clear my mind. And there may have been maybe some emails that you had open, and that's another thing too. We'll kind of talk about that in a quick second. But maybe there was something a notification that you got, or an email that you got, or a project that that's due tomorrow, and you really got to try to focus on it. You don't really know how to get started. take some time away, throughout the day, and just a couple minutes at a time, and just meditate on it. Clear your head. You'd be surprised at how productive you're going to be coming back off of that, and where you kind of have like this collection of thought, and you're ready to go. I highly recommend it. I said a few seconds ago about email. One of the things that I've been reading about having email open, whether it's on your phone or on your computer, and you have that app open, shut that down. Only check email every maybe once every couple of hours, and you may want to set a reminder to do it. But it's not something that you have open all throughout the day, because an email can come through at any time, and you could be productive into something. Once you see that email pop up, and a lot of times it may be like a little quick notification at the bottom of your screen, but then it's going to attract you, right? And you're going to say, oh, okay, well, what was that? Let me see what that is. And it could be nothing. It could be like an ad for something. It could be spam, whatever. But just being able to take away from what you're doing and pay attention to what that is, you'd be surprised at how much energy and focus that takes away from what you're doing to then shift back and try to continue where you were. You lose ground, and you're not going to get that ground back. You will over time, but it may take you 20, 30 minutes for you to gain that momentum that you had prior to having that quick distraction. So shut off email. Maybe check it once every other hour, at the top of every other hour, maybe at every even hour. So like, let's say, for example, at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're checking your emails, then you close it down, check it again at 10, check it again at 12, and so on. Maybe that's a way to do it, right? So that's there. So that's what I have for you in terms of things that I've used and things that I do that are really, really beneficial in terms of staying focused. I hope those were great for you. Now, before I let you go, I have a couple of ideas that I wanted, some other bonus things that I wanted to give to you guys, as well as some apps suggestions that you can try out and download. One of the things that I would say is that some of my best ideas in terms of being or what I should say this, when I'm supposed to be focused on something, a lot of times what happens while I'm working on something, I get a random thought about something else. And so while I have that thought, I want to engage on it. I want to I want to jump to it and start working on it. And so what I do now is I write down what that idea is. And so that might be, in something like this, just a quick little notebook that you just, open up, and you have a page and you write down all your ideas, and maybe something like that you just have handy on your desk, or you have handy, in your bag or something like that. In my case, it may be something like that I use, and in a lot of cases, just maybe an app that I just quickly open up on my phone and just write down the idea, and so that way I just know, okay, I'll go back and check this out later on when I have the time allotted for me to jump into that. So that's one thing that I would definitely say to do, so that way you don't lose that thought, but at the same time you're giving it the justice it needs for being a good thought, but just not the time right now because you're focused on on the task at hand. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put this up on the within the group in the files. This is a productivity tracker that I created, and so what this is and it's 2 pages. The first page really is just for you to kind of write out all the, this is every hour of the day, and then every day of the week, and you just write out what you do for each hour of the day. And this is the reason why I do this, and I got this idea from my mentor about tracking my time, is that when you actually write out and you see what you're doing from day to day, or from hour to hour, really, you're really able to see just how productive you are and where your focus is. And so by doing this and then going back and reviewing it at the end of the day or at the end of the week, you can kind of see where you could either fit in some more time, some more design sprints maybe, or some productivity sprints, or you could see where you're spending time on other things that may not be relevant, or maybe pulling away from your productivity. But nonetheless, it's a really good spreadsheet that you can just print out, just have it on your desk, and kind of document from hour to hour what you do, so that way you can kind of review it later on. The second page of this is kind of a continuation with the time. If you're up past 11 o'clock, you can still write in those times there. But then also I wrote in some goals that you can kind of look at from week to week. And so one of the things is to say, for example, let's say you start this on a Monday or a Sunday, whatever week you want to start this out on. One of the first things that's on here, it says, my main goal this week is to blank. and you write down what that is. And so when you know, every time you look at this, because it's on your desk, my main goal is to do what? So every time you see it, you're always thinking about it, or you're getting a reminder, I need to complete this goal. This is a really big goal for me, or this is a goal for me that I want to get done this week. And so it's always going to be on my mind instead of just having it in my mind and kind of shoving it. Now it's in my face. I've written it down. It's real now. The next thing is, what's my big accomplishment from last week? So one of the things that we don't always do, as creatives, is kind of look at what we've done and remember what we've done, or recall what we've done. And so by having this written down, it kind of gives you a sense of, at least for me, it gives a sense of self where it's like, I did do something that was really big last week, and that's what it was. So yes, and because I did that, I can definitely do this. And so by documenting that is also really helpful. And the next thing is is one new thing that I learned was what? And having that again, that maybe you learned that this week, maybe you learned that last week, something that you learned. Doesn't necessarily matter, but what is the one new thing that you learned? As having a side hustle, or as being a creative, or an entrepreneur or a self-business owner, we always should be learning something new. Otherwise, we get stagnant, and there's a whole other topic that I can talk about with that. But nonetheless, you definitely should document what's something that you learned that's new. All right. The next thing is, I'm going to attempt to blank. It may be, I'm going to attempt to make some cold calls. I'm going to attempt to add some people to my mailing list. I'm going to attempt to, send out, emails to clients that I haven't heard from in a while. Doesn't matter. I'm going to attempt to take an online class. I don't know. I'm going to attempt to meditate for the first time. Whatever that it is, document that, right? Because then it could end up being that accomplishment that you go back the following week and write down and say, I actually did that, right? And the last thing is, I feel most rewarded when, and then type that in. It's also really good to understand, when you feel rewarded, because then you can kind of chase that and make that a tangible thing. More times than not, we might say that we feel, I know for me, being, a gadget person, I feel rewarded when I order something and I get something in the mail, delivered at the door from Amazon. But that may not always be a true reward. It may be just, a self-satisfying thing that I do. But nonetheless, there are other things that I do that are rewarded, like when I learn something new, or when I accomplish something that I never thought that I would do before. I definitely, feel rewarded. Or maybe I feel rewarded when I hear back from a client and they say, hey, what you did, this implementation was great, and we wanted to let you know about it, and we're telling a whole bunch of our colleagues that this was you that did it, and we're including you in our press release. I don't know, but something like that is definitely something that's worth documenting and reflecting on from time to time. So by having these things printed out, it's kind of nice to go back and look at them from week to week. Maybe you spend at the end of the month, you kind of look and see what you've done, and then kind of helps plan for your following month. One of the things that we probably should talk about on here is creating, a business plan, if you will, or a strategy plan, from month to month. I think that's really, really helpful, especially by having that written down and kind of having an idea of the things that you really want to accomplish. Maybe you don't know what you should accomplish, but by having some things that are already preset in there, let me know in the comments if that's something that you'd be interested in. I could definitely create that. But for the time being, I'm going to add this in the group, so it'll be in the files that are up there, so that way you can download and you can use. It's going to be in Excel, so you can kind of edit it how you need to, and so kind of use that. Let me know what you think. But that's all I have for you guys this week. Thank you for tuning in. Those of you that are on the replay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys again next week. All right, bye-bye.